This is the top 5 best decks in Master Duel right now. I know I've been gone for a while. I was in Japan for the World Championships of Vanguard as well as the Vanguard Worlds Invitational. But now I'm back, and so let's go over these best decks because boy, a lot has changed. I was gone, I was in Japan, I was actually playtesting some Yu-Gi-Oh! A little bit as well, playing my fire decks. I'm like, boy, these cards are broken. And then, what happens? What do I see on my phone? Master Duel is on fire, literally. Alright, let's go over it. On number 5, we have Superheavy Samurai. Still the crazy combo pile with no spells and traps. This engine is still just ridiculous. They have a bunch of one-card starters. If they pop off, they auto-win, but they do struggle against Droll and Max C a fair bit. Now, if we go into their most played cards right here, again, special thanks to Master Duel Meta, we can see we have Bike, which is the level 2 they need for Axel Synchro into Baron plays. It's just a one-card starter. They have the Soul Piercer, Wakaushi, all just one-card starters into everything. Then the Soft Brick. Of course, they also play Gamma Driver, because if people Droll or Maxi too early, they kind of just auto-win on the spot. You know, this makes a Axel Synchron into Baron by itself, if they can summon it out. And then, of course, not being Droll or Maxi is just very, very good. Also, it can play a billion hand traps, and boy, you're gonna need a billion hand traps if you want to win against a deck that's on number 1 today. Ho ho ho! But so still a really solid deck, but of course it has kind of fallen off. A lot of people are still playing a bunch of Droll right now, which is very weird in OCG style metas because everyone's on Max C as well. So you have two hand traps at max copies that conflict with each other, which is very, very big. But hey, if you're desperate, you're desperate. On number 5, we have Vanquish Soul. Now, honestly, this deck I still don't think is that strong. Of course, it is crazy that they did get their support pretty early compared to some other decks, but in the end, it's really a shifter deck, and I think a lot of its wins come from just being able to shifter. And boy, being able to shifter has just gotten quite a bit more important because of what's on number 1. So yeah, Vanquish Soul is shifter.deck, and if you look at the other shifter.decks, whether it's Kashtira, whether it's Exosister or Flu, Vanquish Soul is of course the best one by far right now, at least in the Master Duel meta. In TCG, we might argue Kashtira is actually the better shifter deck, but in Master Duel, it's no contest, easily Vanquish Soul. And again, looking at their most played cards, of course, Hand Traps and Raisin, which is combo, Stake Your Soul. Borger at 3, interestingly, we have our Madloff at 2 usually, but then of course, you know, we look at the most important card in this deck, Dimension Shifter. Now, interestingly, only in 83% of decks, I don't believe that. I think the only people who don't play 2 Shifter in this deck are people who don't have 2 Shifter. This is like the bread and butter of the deck. I think it's most of its win con, hot take. And of course, only 1 Pot of Prosperity because it's a 1, which is really, really painful for this deck because it can have some consistency issues. But overall, if you want to be anti-meta right now, this is going to be it. This is going to be your very best bet. On number 3, we have Mathmech. Now, Mathmech, I have been calling this deck good or a sleeper on so many tier lists, and so many people disagree every time, but boy, Mathmech can play a lot of hand traps and has a lot of one-card combos. And if there's one thing you need right now, it's a lot of hand traps, because you are not beating number 1 without them. Yeah, I mean, I think most people by now, if you've been playing Master Duel, you know what's on number 1. You know the monstrosity that is going on. Bring back tier limits, please, because whew. But yeah, Mathmech, I've been saying the same thing over and over. Just one-card combos, tons of hand traps. Stop your opponent from doing their ridiculous bullshit, because otherwise you do not get to play the game. Looking at their most played cards, once again, a Circular at 3, 100% of the time. That's right. And if you then look at TCG and OCG, OCG at 1, TCG banned. This is what reasonably should happen to this card because it's so broken, but because of what's going on in Master Duel, I think Mathmech can have whatever they want. You know, like, at this point, the format, this is a little breadcrumb of an issue compared to the giant cake that's in front of us. You know, Ash Maxi, obviously called by, obviously every single deck is going to play that. We have more one-card combo and so forth. And then we have every single hand trap. You know, Nibs, we have Imperms, we have Veilers, we have Drolls, we have Bells. We are down bad. We need to stop our opponents from playing the game. And this is one of the decks that does that the best. On number number 2, we have Branded Despia, and I can't believe it. Last formats, we were like, oh, Branded is so strong, and that was mostly because all of the best decks kept getting nuked, and Branded, you know, has so many little options in their deck building that every single hit, even though they were hit quite hard compared to TCG here, it's just dodge, 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 dodge. However, Branded now is actually one of the few decks that meshes really well with the board breakers that can beat the number 1. And so even in TCG right now, and in OCG previously, we saw Branded as one of the decks that could actually stand up to the menace that is on number 1. So looking at some of their most used cards, I mean, Albaz and so forth, of course, I don't really need to talk about that. We all know what Branded does at this point. We have the Maxi, but then we look at Super Polymerization. Being able to use Super Polymerization on certain fire monsters can be pretty damn good. We of course also have Ash because we have to play it with Maxi and so forth. We also see Thrust, which is huge against that deck, and we have Tactics. So being able to go Thrust into Tactics, and then depending on which end board they went for, just being able to break it relatively well is pretty important. Also, this deck has access to Guardian Chimera, which can help a fair bit. In the TCG, we do see a few more board breakers in this deck that really help, but the thing is that in Master Duel, you're forced into Max C and Ash just to not get Max C yourself, which kind of hurts. Of course, Called By is pretty good into that deck as well, but so here we see a somewhat of a hybrid approach, again, because you always have at least these 6 hand traps, but then we still see the Super Poly and the Thrust, which is really solid. So this is like one of the decks that is kind of anti the number 1, but when I say that, you need to be careful because that doesn't mean this deck has a good win rate into number 1. It means every single other deck has such a dog shit win rate that this one being not as bad is quite okay. So yeah, Branded still a solid deck. In the TCG, it is also pretty solid right now. One of the few decks that can stand up to the menace that is number 1. And number 1, of course, I have been hyping this shit up all video. We have Snake Eye. And I honestly, again, I can't believe that we are seeing this. We have been complaining that Master Duel was too late every time. You know, it's 6 months behind TCG. It's so many months behind OCG. Oh my god, we want to get the new cards. But when we say that, we did not want them to go, oh, you want the new cards? Okay, let us nuke all the best decks from previously and then jump a couple months forward and give you the new tier 0 deck right now. That is not what we asked for. But that is what happened. We are actually seeing Snake Eyes being played because for some reason they decided, okay, these cards you're gonna get early, and all the other decks are gonna stay nuked. Look at this. So we go into their most played cards right here. For some reason, they decided they're gonna drop Wanted and Snake Eye Ash and Diabellstar and Populous with Flamberge and Original Sinful Spoils and Oak in the fields. But every fucking card, even the Trap, even fucking Dramatic Snake Eye Chase, Promethean Princess we already got like way earlier. All of them were just dropped instantly in Master Duel. Again, while all the other decks that were, you know, normally you creep gradually, they just nuked them into the ground because Master Duel does that work that way. You know, they drop a new deck and then they go ban list, ban list, ban list. They keep on weakening them. So now you suddenly drop this full power, almost tier 0 threat in TCG and in OCG into that weakened format, and you just have the best deck in Master Duel by a landslide. It is absolutely crazy. The only thing this deck is missing is what Bonfire. You know, so Bonfire is like a spell that searches Populous and then is a 1-card combo without committing your normal summon. So imagine you have like even more Diabellstars in your deck without having to use the Diabellstar. You know, it's more pushes. That is the only thing you're missing. But beyond that, this deck is at full power. And in the TCG, it is basically tier 0. And here we are. We are now straight up playing almost the same format, but just with even weaker competition. So yeah, this deck is absolutely mad. The end boards are nigh unbreakable, especially because they're always backed up by so much non-engine. Like this deck is like full of 1-card combos, and then every single extra card of engine you have in your hand plays through hand traps, which is usually not the case. You know, usually you have a card and then maybe another card, and if the hand trap is well timed, it might trade with both. Here, that's never the case. Almost never the case, at least. So you just have so many hand traps, and you will need them to stop the other Snake Eye deck, because in general, the Snake Eye board is not breakable by another Snake Eye deck. You know, some people are coping that going second can be done, but it's just not true. That's also evident from all the fucking hand traps you're playing here. You're not board breakering this deck. I mean, you might if you open like Super Poly plus Tactics, but it's not happening. Let's be fucking real. It's not happening. So this is the best deck right now by a landslide in every format. I don't recall the last time this was the case. I don't think it even was the case. No, it was not the case with Tier. This is the only time in Yu-Gi-Oh so far where TCG, OCG, and Master Duel all have the same Knight Tier 0 deck. This is crazy. Again, I was in Japan. I was playing a Rescue Ace deck against my testing buddy who was playing Snake Eye, and we were just, you know, having fun with these Broken Fire cards. And then I got the tweet like, Master Duel just received this. It made no sense. I lost my mind. So here we are. What are your thoughts on this menace? This is the best deck by far. There is no real competition. You can try with Branded. You can try with Shifter. But like, you're not always drawing Shifter. You can't just rely on your 2-off to always carry your ass. And then if you're playing a deck like Vanquish Soul, which is already pretty bricky, you might have the Shifter, but you might not have enough engine, you know, to even play the game. Especially because they're also playing so many hand traps. Now, the Shifter will deal with the Maxi and the Veiler and the Droll, but it won't deal with like Ash or Imperm. Yeah, I don't know. You just stand no real shot. I think if you play a tournament right now, you play this or you don't play. Welcome to Fire Year, I guess. Luckily, Europe doesn't have major events right now. That's a video for another day. Be sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Do you love Fire? Do you hate Fire? Personally, I find this deck fun to play, but I can imagine if you don't find this deck fun to play, you're not gonna have a fun time on Master Duel or in Yu-Gi-Oh! Really, the coming months. Hope you found this interesting. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you soon. Ciao.